Oh, hi there. Unfortunately, due to our national ongoing healthcare emergency, the Wilton Historical Society will be closed until further notice. But in the meantime, we figured since you can't come to us, we're just going to have to come to you. We're going to be offering a series of digital programs we're calling History is Here. We'll be examining all sorts of topics, including historical oddities, memorable stories, and examining some objects from our permanent collection. In our inaugural episode, we're going to be exploring a topic that you're probably going to have to show some ID for.
And our subject for tonight is the most evil of them all.
Who that? I mean, who's that?
Alcohol.
Thanks, Bing. I'll take it from here. Yes, we're going to discuss alcohol, or more importantly, the history of alcohol in Wilton. The town's had a up and down relationship with booze throughout its history, culminating in a Ross and Rachel-esque will they, won't they during the 1980s. But our story begins in the colonial days of town. A place where, just like any college dorm room, booze was cheap and easy to find. The Code of 1650, a set of laws passed by the General Court of Connecticut on everything from electing the governor to erecting fence posts on your property, had a lengthy section about operating taverns. It acknowledged the people's right to drink alcohol, but also acknowledged that people like to do that excessively. Here's a quote directly from that 1650 code. "Forasmuch as there is a necessary use of houses of common entertainment in every commonwealth, and of such as retail, wine, beer, and victuals, yet because there are so many abuses of that lawful liberty, both by persons entertaining and persons entertained, there is also need of strict laws and rules to regulate such an employment." The first tavern in Wilton appeared in 1727, and multiple homes throughout the 18th century served as taverns, including the one I'm sitting in right now, the Fitz-Raymond House. The longest-running tavern, the Marvin Tavern, opened at the home of Matthew Marvin V in 1762 and served for 30 years. The house still stands today at 405 Danbury Road. For all the antisocial residents of early Wilton who preferred the peace and quiet of drinking alcohol in their own home, there are plenty of options for that too. The earliest federal census conducted in Wilton in 1810 showed that there were at least 5 operating distilleries. Over the course of that year, they produced 1,680 gallons of rum and whiskey, or approximately 1 gallon each for the 1,728 residents of town. And just like you can buy a gallon of milk at any grocery store today, hard liquor was sold at pretty much every general store to people of all ages. In one instance, in 1821, William Comstock wrote a letter to the Betts family shopkeeper that would rival any modern fake ID. In it, he wrote, "Please give my children 1 quart of rum at 50 cents a gallon." In another instance, Wilton storekeeper Michael Abbott was accused of watering down the liquor he sold by a man named William Stewart, a man with little understanding of irony, given that Stewart would later serve an extended prison sentence for being convicted of producing counterfeit money. By the 1820s, the inebriated state of seemingly, the entire state led to the creation of the Connecticut Temperance Society, which in turn led to the creation of the Wilton Temperance Society in 1829. Its initial membership of 27 grew to nearly 71 by year's end, and more than doubled to 208 within 4 years. A report put together by the Society in 1833 described their opinion of the town's drunkenness. This society commenced its operation at a period when the principles of the Temperance Reformation were not generally understood. So strong was the hold of intemperance on the public mind, so gradual and insidious had been its advances, and so interwoven with its customs, habits, and presents had it become that to multitudes temperance measures appeared not only unnecessary and inefficient, but positively reprehensible. The efforts of these societies had mixed results. By the mid-19th century, social perception of alcohol had shifted to see it as more of a vice than a part of everyday life, and in 1851, the state of Connecticut passed a law banning the distillation of liquor by individuals. 3 years later, the state passed a law creating complete statewide prohibition. Many Wiltonians, along with many other people in Connecticut, decided to ignore this law and chose to fight for their right to party. In 1850, Jehiel Grumman and his son George began brewing beer in South Wilton. In the 1860 census, were listed as beer makers, despite it being technically illegal. The largely ineffectual law was repealed in 1872. The temperance movement remained undeterred, and in 1876, the Wilton chapter of the Sons of Temperance was formed, and helped to keep Wilton a dry town through a series of votes throughout the late 1800s. In 1881, Wilton doctor J. Edward Turner broke ground near what is today Middlebrook School for the construction of a hospital for the treatment of alcoholic women. Before any construction could begin, Turner's fundraising efforts were derailed by some of his rival former medical colleagues. The hospital plans were canceled, and Dr. Turner died a few years later. In 1919, the 18th Amendment, also known as the Volstead Act, was ratified, bringing about the era we now know as Prohibition. It was later repealed in 1933 by the 21st Amendment. The Volstead Act was largely ineffectual, and it arguably did more for organized crime than it did to stop any consumption of alcohol. Although it did bring about a pretty good Kevin Costner movie about 50 years later, so I suppose there's a silver lining in everything. With Prohibition repealed, alcohol sales in Wilton were allowed for about a year, until October 1934, when through a town vote of 303 to 261, it was voted to make Wilton a dry town once again. Beginning in the 1980s, there was a consistent push to bring alcohol back to town, and through a referendum included on the 1992 presidential election ballot, Wiltonians chose to allow the serving of booze at restaurants only, suggesting that, even 3 decades ago, politics drove Americans to desire to drink heavily. In 2010, the town approved licenses for liquor stores, and now Wiltonians can enjoy their booze at a variety of establishments. So when you throw back a cold one in the next few weeks, remember the struggle of everyone over the last 200 years who helped make that possible. Thanks for joining us. Remember to drink responsibly, and stay tuned for some fun history.